This video is brought to you by Squarespace. There's an old saying by author Mark Twain that goes, "There is no such thing as a new idea." He likened this to staring in a kaleidoscope, where you can turn it all sorts of ways and get all these new combinations, but it's still the same old colored pieces of glass that have been in use through all the ages. Broadway's been turning this kaleidoscope for decades, but that hasn't stopped people from asking, can't they make anything original anymore? Adaptation is nothing new, especially in theater. Phantom of the Opera, originally a book and a 1925 monster movie. Oklahoma, originally Green Grow the Lilacs. Little Shop of Horrors, originally a 1960s horror movie. All new combinations of the same old glass. What makes each of these adaptations original is the person turning the kaleidoscope. Or, in Alex Timber's case, the person smashing it apart and putting it back together again. The main job of a director is to ensure everything from the script, to the music, to the performances, to the design is working together to tell a story in the best way possible. Think of them like the captain of a ship, only instead of guiding coordinates, they're guiding taste. In a world where movie to musical adaptations are more common than ever, what does Timbers do to make his feel so distinct? Well, the answer involves off-Broadway anarchy, 1990s rock musicals, and horses floating in midair. This is how Alex Timbers makes adaptations that still feel original. But of course, before we dive in, I have to take a contractually obligated 30 seconds to tell you about Squarespace. Building your dream website has never been easier, thanks to Squarespace's state-of-the-art design tools and beautiful templates. Even better, their business tools mean you can manage email, appointments, and sales all in one spot. So head to squarespace.com/waitinthewings and use code waitinthewings to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Alex Timbers shows all have one thing in common. Well, maybe two. They all start the moment you walk into the theater. One minute, you're shuffling toward the Al Hirschfeld Theater as tourists bump into you and pedicabs blast Frank Sinatra, and the next, you're walking into a 1900s Parisian cabaret with a windmill and a two-story elephant. Unlike other shows where the set ends at the edge of the stage, the design of a Timbers show engulfs the entire theater. This is deliberate, and it's something Timbers refers to as the theatrical envelope, the container that surrounds the audience and blocks them off from the outside world. What easily could be written off as a meaningless gimmick is a crucial starting point to understanding Alex Timbers, not only in how he approaches film-to-stage adaptations, but really theater as a whole. Before leading the charge on multi-million-dollar musicals and John Mulaney comedy specials, Timbers staged low-budget theater with Les Frères Corbusier, an off-Broadway company he co-founded in 2003. Here's an interview he did with Broadway.com, where he breaks down the types of shows they created.
The work was kind of looking at historical figures and historical subject matters through sort of irreverent mediums and contexts, and definitely every show was, sort of complete kind of its own thing within this mission statement.
To call Les Frères Corbusier untraditional would be like calling Salvador Dali a little out there. Named after the famous urban planner Le Corbusier, the company took experimental theater to a whole nother level, with shows that told 100-year-old plays with robots or poked fun at Scientology with 12-year-olds. The troupe was bold, not only for the shows they wrote, but for how they told them. In 2006, they transformed a 15,000 square foot warehouse into an evangelical haunted house called Hell House. Guests were guided through 8 showrooms, each one showcasing the dark, gruesome, and outlandish results of living in sin, before ending in a calm reception room that offered donuts, Kool-Aid, a cardboard cutout of Jesus.
We, of course, want to make really aggressive, visceral theater, and we would make theater and no one would come. And we had a chalkboard just outside of where you would walk through, and we had these chalk marks on for how many people Knightley fainted or threw up in the first 15 minutes. And once we filled up that board, I was like, we did it. We made Visceral Theatre.
That desire continued when Broadway unexpectedly came knocking in 2010 with Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, a biomusical of 7th President Andrew Jackson and the rise of populism set to emo rock music. Tapping into that same downtown experimental vibe, Timbers and set designer Danniella Worley brought the set of Bloody Bloody directly into the audience. The walls were covered with pictures of old presidents with arrows sticking out of them, and an upside-down taxidermed horse floated over the orchestra seats. These visuals created a distinct atmosphere for the show before it even started, and are still a hallmark of Timbers' style. Compare this shot of Bloody Bloody with this picture of Moulin Rouge, both taken roughly 10 years apart. The theatrical envelopes might look similar, but they each tell two different stories. Look at Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson. The pictures are crooked, the curtains are tattered, and the walls are a bunch of mishmashed antiques. The vibe here is a world of unrest, irreverence, and rebellion that causes the red to give a feeling of anger. Now, consider Moulin Rouge. Here, the curtains are clean and draped. There are elaborate, swooping arches and a wall of warm yellow lights. Again, red is the predominant color here. But instead of anger, it gives this feeling of sin and seduction. This world is one of romance, spectacle, and carnal delight. Now, compare that same photo of Moulin Rouge the musical with Moulin Rouge the movie. Same old glass, different combination. Instead of replicating the designs of the movie for Moulin Rouge, Timbers and his team leaned heavily into their own historical research of Paris near the turn of the century. Similar to how history and popular culture collided with Les Frères Corbusier, the research for Moulin Rouge helped the team create a contemporary design that followed the rules of the Belle Epoque time period. As Alex Timbers put it in an interview with Variety, a lot of world building is fun and dreaming big, but a lot of it is about being rigorous with rules of design and the period's elements. You have to be consistent and rigorous with yourself, where the rules feel effortless for an audience. Director Julie Taymor's unique atmosphere she created for The Lion King is a huge reason it became a success. Disney's first Broadway musical adaptation, Beauty and the Beast, was practically a shot-for-shot recreation of the 1991 movie. This led to many critics writing it off as a theme park show. Disney CEO Michael Eisner, he took that criticism to heart, and he told the heads of Disney's new theater division to do something more adventurous with their next musical, The Lion King. And no director was more adventurous than Julie Taymor. If you look at it, a lot of the beats and characters in The Lion King are the same, but Taymor's use of puppets, mask work, and South African culture create this atmosphere that clearly distinguishes the musical from the movie. Unlike Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King was critically praised, it won 6 Tony Awards, and it's still running over 25 years later. Creating a distinct environment is a key starting place for Timbers, a principle that really comes in handy when adapting one visual medium for another. If you pause any frame from the movie versions of Moulin Rouge or Beetlejuice, the visual identity of Baz Luhrmann and Tim Burton is always on full display. So why doesn't Timbers just make a carbon copy for the stage? Well, it's because that's never been his style. Timbers will honor the source material, but he's not going to replicate it. Just like movies have iconic visual styles, they also have iconic story moments. A dramatic lament in the rain, boxing to Eye of the Tiger, or saying Beetlejuice 3 times. But famous lines and needle drops aren't enough to sustain an audience for 2.5 hours. Just ask Almost Famous.
I have to go home.
You are home.
To combat this, Timbers dives into his adaptations as if he were writing a completely new show. And he starts by Rebreaking the Story. Using note cards, he and the creative teams figure out how the original film operates, what the narrative and emotional through lines are, and then they ask each other how they can use those through lines to elevate the story. If you pop in a VHS of Beetlejuice and then you go and watch the musical after, not only will the sound quality be better, though you will have to sacrifice that Looney Tunes pre-show, the narratives will be completely different too. If you don't know, the 1988 film follows this recently deceased couple named the Maitlands, who try to scare a new family, named the Dietzes, out of their old home. Now, nobody can see the Maitlands except for the strange and unusual Lydia Dietz. But even with her help, they still can't get the Dietzes to move out, leading the Maitlands to recruit this creepy bioexorcist named, you guessed it, Beetlejuice, and things get worse from there. Despite the film being named Beetlejuice, the main characters are really the Maitlands. Beetlejuice himself only shows up for 20 minutes. Alex Timbers grew up with Beetlejuice, and he told producers that he would only direct a musical version if they could change the point of view from the Maitlands to Lydia. As he detailed in a Forbes article, so many people relate to the movie because it's a story about outsiders. People see themselves in these characters. Even though Lydia isn't the focus of the movie, her emotional story feels like the core of it. After rebreaking the story, Timbers and his team made drastic changes to follow that emotional through line. In the movie, it's only implied that Lydia's mom is dead. In the musical, it's the main point of contention between Lydia and her father. In the movie, Delia Dietz is Lydia's stepmom. In the musical, she's Lydia's life coach who's secretly sleeping with her dad. In the movie, Lydia summons Beetlejuice in the last 10 minutes of the movie to save the Maitlands. In the musical, she does it at the end of Act 1, and the two wind up becoming best friends. Now, these changes are wildly different from the source material, something that Beetlejuice himself calls out in the first 2 minutes of the show, but they all come from a place that's true to the original universe. They build on the story and turn it from a movie about a couple of ghosts haunting people to a musical that deals with loneliness, grief, and being an outsider. That's not to say that all of these themes aren't in the movie, it's just that the musical brings them to the forefront. Other non-Timbers adaptations, like Heathers, have also taken this bold revisionist approach in their adaptations. The screenwriter of the original movie, Daniel Waters, made it no secret that the second half of Heathers, the movie, struggled because all of the interesting characters were dead. So Heathers playwright Lawrence O'Keefe fixed this in the musical by turning all of those dead characters into ghosts. The only way that you can justify an adaptation existing is if the musical builds on the original and presents the material in some unique way. A hallmark of Alex Timbers. One of the director's most formative experiences was when he saw The Who's Tommy on Broadway in the early 1990s. The show's contemporary visuals and rock score were unlike anything Timbers had ever seen before. It wasn't traditional theater. It was something much more modern, a feeling that continues to influence his approach to directing today.
I think there's a gulf between popular culture and musical theater. Musical theater feels irrelevant. I think theater in general feels irrelevant to, the sort of the larger cultural dialogue in America.
And what better way to bridge that gulf between theater and pop culture than by dropping audiences right in the middle of it? Rocky the Musical was this major turning point in the career of Alex Timbers. It opened in Germany in 2012, just 2 years after Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, and it was by far the most commercial musical he'd directed up to that point. But despite the bigger budget, the musical was a great practice in restraint. Surprisingly, the majority of the boxing show didn't actually take place in the ring. Instead, it opted to focus on the characters in more intimate settings, like rundown apartments and pet shops. But once the finale rolled around, the gloves came off. For the final fight between Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed, the boxing ring extended into the theater as audience members came on stage and surrounded it. In an instant, the Winter Garden Theater on Broadway transformed into the Philadelphia Spectrum Arena, as Balboa and Creed slugged it out. Announcers provided play-by-plays, the fighters became increasingly battered, and all of it was captured on real TV cameras that beamed it on screens throughout the theater. Now fast forward to today, and Alex Timber's entire career and each show he makes always prioritizes how audiences engage with the piece. In Moulin Rouge, he placed the audience in the middle of a 1900s Parisian club. In Beetlejuice, he gave the audience someone to interact with by turning the character into a fourth wall-breaking smartass. In Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, he turned the whole theater into a frat house where the audience could hang out with Andrew Jackson. And in Hell House, he shepherded the audience through 8 scenes of terror before giving them Kool-Aid and donuts. Now this is something that a movie can never do because there's always this clear separation between the film and the viewer. You know, when I watch King Kong, I don't feel like I'm actually on top of the Empire State Building with this 25-foot gorilla. More often than not, I'm sitting on my couch and I'm trying to stop my cats from stealing my taquitos.
I think that entertainment, you know, particularly theater where you are live there, of course you should be a part of the outcome of the event.
And that is what makes an Alex Timbers adaptation different. Instead of sitting in a seat and watching a show performed in a box, you're in the box. You hear every punch in the boxing ring. Feel the wind from the dresses of can-can dancers. Breathe in fog from the netherworld. Throughout the whole process, Alex Timbers never tries to replicate what the movies do well, probably because he knows he can never achieve that. Movies are their own thing. But so is live theater. It's this shared experience where you and a huge group of people are all in the same place at the same moment in time. And Timbers always strives to give audiences an experience that they'll never forget. But absolutely none of this would have happened if he hadn't put the President of the United States in a pair of skinny jeans. Click on this video to learn more about Alex Timbers' first show on Broadway and how Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson made history go all sexy pants. And support the channel on Patreon to help us continue making these documentaries.